What I want to talk about today is something you would be surprised is misunderstood at all. Cleansing. It's a part of spiritual hygiene. It's something that we all kind of associate with African spirituality. And yet, yeah, we need to talk about this. Hello and welcome to Sangoma Society. Mina ngingumakhosi uNomabuto Emsamo. I am Honey Magwagwa to my parents, and I am Honey Tell a Story everywhere on the internet. This is Sangoma Society, where we demystify the ancestral. And today, we're going to be talking about something that you would presume we all kind of understand when it comes to African spirituality, which is cleansing. And I think the problem comes with the phrasing of cleansing, because we often communicate in terms that we try to keep universal and understandable. Sometimes we misinterpret things because almost every ceremony or process that pertains the ancestors has some form of washing involved, whether it's water, different bodies of water, or the use of herbs, root medicine, plant medicine, or ceremonial elements which are used for bathing. We end up translating that aspect of ceremony and intercession, which we would term as ukugeza, which is quite a neutral term, and then translated into English as cleansing, which comes from the word clean. To clean is to cleanse. The doing word, which often implies that at times something is dirty and therefore requires cleansing. And that in itself leads to resistance, misunderstanding, and a delay in what could actually bring about the change that a person is seeking in their lives. Language. It's a great barrier, especially when it comes to this realm of reality. But before we get to the big ceremonies, let's just start with the reality of what cleansing actually is when it's not even misinterpreted. It is a basic part of your spiritual hygiene. You know how brushing your teeth every day is a basic part of your dental hygiene? There's certain aspects of cleansing that are like that. Perhaps you don't do them every day. Maybe once a month, maybe with the full moon, new moon, maybe less frequently. Once a quarter with the equinox or the solstice, maybe even less frequently, annually. Different cleanses at different times, different intensities for different reasons. Just like perhaps you go to the dentist once a year or quarterly. Do you follow me? Not everything in the same way, depending on the condition that you are living with. Some people are going to need to go to the dentist more frequently than others because of certain conditions that they live with. In order to maintain their health, they may need more intervention than others, even though they may maintain the same level of dental hygiene on a daily basis. It is the same with spiritual cleansing. Can depend on the nature of your spiritual disposition. Are we together? So, speaking on a level of spiritual hygiene, what you can do on your own to maintain good spiritual hygiene. As a person who knows themselves to have had a recent cleanse, is in good standing, spiritually, emotionally, financially, not faced with a situation which they're trying to turn around, just wanting to keep the equilibrium of your life going, have a basic routine that you stick to. This routine, I would advise to be at the very minimum quarterly. At best, with every full moon. And if you are a person who is living with a spiritual calling and you have not yet initiated and things are challenging, perhaps with every new moon as well as with every full moon. And if you are a person who is an initiated healer, then I would recommend at least weekly, a basic routine of spiritual hygiene that you can proceed through in your own home. Whether you use plant medicine or you keep it at just salt or plain water, you need to be doing something. What are the some things? My favorite, you know what I'm going to say. Ukpalaz. You see, when I was growing up, something I used to see the older boys in the family doing, probably like at the end of the weekend, every Sunday or so, would be what they would call ukukhipha ugwebu. Ukukhipha ugwebu is to take out the foam. So after imbibing in fermented beverages all through the weekend, then on Sunday morning, they would purge to take out any remaining fermented anything, any sediment, any whatever, to clear out their heads for the week ahead. And yeah, that thing actually helps for ipuza face, hey? And if you want the other benefits of Ukpalaza, you know we have a video all about that. Another thing that one could add to their spiritual routine is a spiritual bath. For that, I do recommend that you use plant medicine, depending on when the spiritual bath is taking place. With the full moon, you want medicine that clears. With the new moon, you want medicine that calls in. If you want to find out more about that, you can find it in our apothecary on sangomasociety.com. Then there is steaming. Steaming, I absolutely love. It is meditative. It is almost a reconstructing of the self in the ether of that warm steam. I love steaming because it also just doesn't feel hectic for me. On a very personal level, it's warm, which is nice. And even when it's hot, I still like the warmth of a good steam. And then there is ukuqatha, enemas. Now, in a certain province of this country, kuyaziwa ukuthi indoda iyacatha. Enemas are very powerful for regulating the sacral chakra and aiding where stamina may be needed, and also as a way to deposit medicine directly into that part of the body. Of course, they help with other situations, including digestive ailments, etc. But just speaking on a regular, these 4 steps, or at least 2 out of the 4, should be part of what you would say would be your routine of maintaining spiritual hygiene on a physical level, right? That is cleansing. Now, when you find yourself perhaps maintaining such a routine, but the situation doesn't change, perhaps you need a greater intervention. Mandulo, in the past that we come from, it was not unusual that a family would be cleansed annually, at the very least, biannually in some cases, but generally sometime between the autumn equinox and the mid-year solstice, we would have a process of being cleansed and fortified as a family in preparation for the most difficult season of the year, which is winter. It's also quite significant, the timing of that season of cleansing and fortification beyond just winter is that we have, as the last month of winter in sub-Saharan Africa, our windiest month of the year. And in that month of the year, siyazinza. We don't go out. Isikhathi sokuzinza ekhaya. So it is not a time in which it is advised that you would be doing river cleansings and mountains or anything like that, because the winds of change are blowing winter away to prepare for spring. So sometimes if there's something that you're trying to chase away, that wind may flip it in a direction that brings it back to you. So for the sake of not having to redo anything, sit at home. Use the time for planning. Also, part of the process of spiritual hygiene. Because when the African New Year comes in September, you want to have your plans clear in your mind so that you can hit the ground running with spring. Now, that annual cleansing, ukudiliza nokuqiniswa, it's like your annual dental cleansing, right? Go in for a deep clean. They just check that there's nothing going on in there that needs special attention. If there is, they fix it and then sort you out and see you next year. Same. Kodwa kusenyangeni, emngomeni, emthandazeleni, where this process would happen, not so much a self-administered process. Whether that person comes to your home to perform this work or you go to them would depend on the dynamic that you find yourself faced with within your family. And then there are certain cleanses and fortifications that happen in preparation for certain ceremonies. Typically, you are looking at things that happen at different stages. So when you're moving from one phase of life into another, you would be cleansed and fortified for that process. So there are cleanses that happen specifically during pregnancy, before birth, cleanses that happen after birth, cleanses that happen at a certain time in the child's early development stage. Then when it is time to begin to go to school outside of the home, a child would be cleansed and fortified. When the child moves to a certain level of schooling, again, if there are any coming of age ceremonies to be observed, before those ceremonies are observed, the child would be cleansed and fortified again. And then when we're moving into adulthood and we look at the time when one would leave the home, whether it is leaving the home through marriage or leaving the home to build your own home, there would be cleansing and fortification that happens for you to be protected on that part of your journey. Cleansing and fortification is to shake off anything you may have picked up and fortify you for the next part of your journey. Simple. And now there's those other cleansings that happen because they've been necessitated by the reality that you may have been subject to a spiritual attack. Hey, sometimes it be like that, and I'm sorry if that has happened to you. I've seen a deep misunderstanding of this aspect of things where people imagine that they can go from one healer to the next until they find a healer that tells them that nothing needs to be done. And they end up wasting so much time where instead of actually getting help, they're fighting the reality that they have been a victim of something crude and cruel. And in an attempt to escape that victimhood, they want someone to tell them that it isn't so. But it is. So you might find that you keep hearing the same thing. And you're like, when is somebody going to tell me something else? I've been consulting. Nobody is going to tell you anything else until you actually do the cleansing that is required in order to address that thing. Sometimes, as seekers on the other side of the table, you come into a healer's space and you want them to tell you something that makes you comfortable. And even though you have the means and the capacity to see through what you know you must do, you say, isn't there something we can do to mitigate, rather? And they say, okay, but this is for the meantime, just to help you get through the season until you're ready to do the work. And then you create a story that that mitigation effort was the actual work that was required. It's not. Sometimes, of course, it's not unheard of. You come across a charlatan who sells you a story about a quick fix that requires so very little from you and so very little of their time, but for the right amount of money, this can be handled. And you're like, yes, let's throw money at this problem and fix it. And it gets worse. Because this is the thing. In the spiritual community now, we talk a lot about magic. I hear that word a lot. Kodwa edlozini, ngesintu, in our indigenous language systems, we don't have a word for magic. We interpret the events that unfold in our lives with the understanding of the parallel universes in which we exist in, the here before, the hereafter, the circular nature of time, and how we exist in a space-time dimension in which certain things are possible, and how other elements exist outside of that dimension and are able to impact our lives here. And we know how to move between these dimensions in order to restore agency to those living in this dimension. Because ultimately, what your ancestors want and the purpose of you having any kind of spiritual practice is to maintain your soul's sovereignty, your agency in this world, over your life, over the intention that you have set for the life that you are living in this space-time dimension. The relationships that you build with your ancestors are to maintain the integrity of that agency, of that intention, to have guides who can see beyond what your mortal eyes can see, to bring you deeper understanding about where you are on the course of your journey. Whether or not you have a calling, we all have ancestors. Not all of our ancestors wish to work through us to heal others. Other ancestors are here to bring you guidance for how to strengthen your bloodline, how to bring to fruition your own intentions. Those are the limitations of the agreements that you have with them. You still need to do the work to maintain the integrity of those relationships. And sometimes there are people who see those relationships, envy them, wish to see them destroyed, or wish to have that for themselves. And instead of doing the work to improve their own relationships with their ancestors, they interfere with yours. And then you need a pretty intense cleansing. It is what it is, and I'm sorry that it happened to you. But no amount of time is going to make the thing go away. No amount of you making adjustments in your life to live around the elephant that occupies the room of your life is going to make that elephant go away. Only you taking action that is directly addressing that issue is going to make it go away. It's very difficult when you find yourself in a position where perhaps someone you trusted has violated the agency of your own intention in your life through dark magic or ukukusebenzisela imithi emibi. And now you find yourself compromised. And the pain of that can cause us to build stories around what we need. Don't do that. The only person you're harming is yourself. The healer whom has identified what it is that you're struggling with is merely a seer, conduit for your ancestors to give you clarity on what it is that has impeded your path. Their job is to avail themselves as an extension of the hands of your ancestors to cleanse and fortify you in the way in which your ancestors has guided them to do. Hence, it was your ancestors who guided you to seek them out, because your ancestors already knew that what they need is in that house. So go there, hear what we want you to do it, we'll give you the means, resolve this so that we can be in better standing. That's why sometimes you find that when you go for a consultation, a healer might be like, okay, they say I should do this for you for this, in exchange for X, Y, Z, as opposed to what I would normally request. Because it's your ancestors that make that petition. And because that healer is in service of their ancestors, and understand that their ancestors and your ancestors have come to their own agreements. And if they're in service to their ancestors, then they're going to have to trust that their ancestors are going to cover them. They just do what is required and keep it moving and trust that their path will be cleared. It's the nature of the thing. Spiritual hygiene on the ancestral plane. They have their own interdimensional relationships there that we may never know. But ultimately, the intention that it comes down to is that you find the help that you need in order for your relationship with them to be on even ground, uninterrupted by the interference that could be sent from people who don't wish you well. The last thing about cleansings comes back to that first thing, language. There are some things which are not cleanses, but ceremonies which need to be facilitated on your behalf. I'm just going to touch on one. There are many. I've already explained how Ogukeza can be misinterpreted because it is part of a ceremony, that the word washing for Ogukeza doesn't have the same gravitas as cleansing, so it just gets switched around. And one such place I see that more than anything is when it comes to ukundlulisa umoya womntwana. What follows a termination of pregnancy, a stillbirth if there is no body to bury, and miscarriage, is the facilitation for the passage of that spirit. Remember how I said stillbirth only in the event that there is no body to bury. Because if there is a body to bury in a stillbirth, that funeral is what facilitates the passage. Do you follow me? However, in the case of miscarriage where there is no body to bury, and in the case of termination where it often happens long before there is a body to speak of, what we are doing is facilitating for the passage of the soul that was sitting at the bus stop waiting for their transport to show up so that they could come into this realm. Where they are, they're waiting. And as time passes, they do things to get your attention. And so sometimes you come in and then they say, oh yeah, this has been caused by a miscarriage, perhaps that you didn't see, or a termination that you had, maybe not now, maybe many, many years ago. And you're like, I've been fine all along. Why now? Because no amount of time passing is going to change the need that that soul has for passage into the next dimension, because they already left the realm of the ancestors and they were on their way here. But now that transport is not here anymore. There's no moralizing of that. If the bus driver says, I'm not going to that destination, the bus is not going there. If that child themselves makes a U-turn on the road, they made a U-turn. But this is the thing, life begins at conception, and yeah, abortion is a medical procedure. There's no moralizing medicine. Not to me, at least. Not in this case, because the agency belongs to the body of the person who would have to carry to term, right? The soul, though, they need to be facilitated for. Somebody needs to go to that bus stop and say, here's some alternative transport. That bus is not coming and you are not going to that destination anymore. But here's a ticket. You can go back where you came from to the ancestral council that sent you here. And from there, you can carry on as you see fit. Because what you don't want is that spirit hanging around. Iziphenduke umdliwa ekhaya, umkhokha ongapheli, where you start to see strange things happening within the bloodline. We've got an extended video on that. But that's just one of the times where we see ukugeza as it pertains to being part of that ceremony being misinterpreted as a cleansing. Again, that word in that context is so loaded. And because it's so loaded, it leads to such deep misinterpretation, divisiveness, and even misunderstanding amongst initiated healers. And in the reality of our social political socialization, wherein we come from, I don't know, this white supremacist thing that rules over all of us, the kyriarchy that we find ourselves in, where we moralize this thing and we make it one thing or another. I mean, you've got people moralizing fibroids now. It's just, it's sad that we find ourselves here. But this is a ceremony. It is practical, necessary, efficient when properly done. And of course, it will keep coming up if you keep getting cleansed for it, because it's not a cleansing. You follow me? I hope that this conversation has brought some understanding about what it is that cleansing actually is. When it comes to the home and personal space, we've got a good few videos on that. When it comes to cars and belongings, we've never covered that. If you want us to, please let us know in the comment section below. And in fact, if you have any questions pertaining to this topic, please pop them down in the comment section below and I will personally answer them. I absolutely love interacting with the comments that you make, and I have so many screenshots from the comments that I've read over the years where I'm like, I really want to make a topic on that, and I'm really intending to do that. So if there was a video topic you suggested and you still haven't seen that video come up, remind me in the comment section. Otherwise, if this video has informed you in any way today, please remember to like. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe. If you're a subscriber and you're wondering why you haven't been seeing our videos, click the notifications bell. And if you'd like to find out more about the resources that we have available for your personal cleansing and more in-depth cleansing, please visit sangomasociety.com. To keep in touch with us everywhere on the internet, you can find us at Sangoma Society on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as well as TikTok. You can also hear our new moon and full moon readings on our podcast via all your favorite listening platforms. Until next time, mina ngingumakhosi uNomaboto. This is Sangoma Society. Kukhanya.